I don't know if any of you might not know this, but I didn't realise that when I first got into this, I looked at a document called Magna Carta. We talked about Magna Carta. I looked at it in great depth and didn't understand a bloody word it said, because it's right in a language I didn't understand. I really didn't understand it. A friend of mine who's a sort of like a historian, Robin his name is, he's an historian and he really does know his stuff about constitutional, or these sort of documents, and he knows his stuff about common law. He said to me, what about Article 61? He said, have you ever read it? I said, well, no, I've read it, but it talks about barons and all sorts of things. But he said, but you could use it. He said, if anything, it'll be a great way of showing the powers that be that you're pissed off. So I toyed with that, and I talked to another gentleman who actually is a constitutional lawyer, and I talked to him and I said, can we do this? And he said, well, I don't know about the legality of it, but we can certainly have a go. So anyway, we formulated an affidavit, and I marched off down to Buckingham Palace in the freezing bloody cold, met a lovely police officer with a bloody great machine gun, and he was really, really nice. He was nice. He actually said, I understand what you're doing. He said, but I can't take it off you because I'm not a member of the household. He said, so you're going to have to come back on Tuesday. I couldn't be bothered with that. So we sent it by mail. What Article 61 was a security clause built into Magna Carta. And basically, if things started to really, really get bad, it says there, seizing castle lands and possessions. I wouldn't quite suggest doing that. But what it did say is, and it does talk about persons, it is legal, it's a legal document, but what it said to me was that lawful, peaceful hindrance without violence. Okay? And that's the key. Non-violent. Okay? Because if you do this with violence, if you try and sort anything out with violence, violence will only ensue. If you do this peacefully, for once in the history of this world, maybe peace will ensue.
Is that just the Queen's birth certificate?
Even if you do it peacefully, and even if you stall by asking questions, can they not do you for obstructing or pervading the course of justice?
Not if there's enough of us.
Not if there's enough. Absolutely right.
How many truncheons have you got?
The point is, right, the point is, right, I'm going to tell you something, and the people, this is why I was told the other night, because I'm very disturbed, and I'm going to tell you something, right? I spent a year in an asylum when I was 14 years old. Hill End. Yeah. What does that say?
I'm with you, yeah? I'm with you. I'm just asking.
No, right. During that time, I was locked up because of my views and because of my anger. Because I was angry. Incredibly angry. And I didn't know what at. That was the point. And up until about 6 months ago, I still didn't realise. So I'd spent 41 and a half years of my life not knowing why I was angry. And I still didn't really understand this anger thing. I didn't understand it. Then I suddenly realised that all through my life, what had actually happened was that my mind was tormenting me. And the only way to actually stop it tormenting me was to stop thinking. And when I said earlier about it takes a lifetime of practice, it's one of the hardest things you could possibly do. But when you do, anything bad that's happened to you in your life, you suddenly realise why it happened to you. Because you're opening up something that allows you to realisation to set in. Because all you ever do if you think is go around in circles. Because that's all I used to do. Now I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I can't predict it. Because as far as I'm concerned, there is no future. And there is no past. There is only now. And for whatever reason, it's brought me here. And for whatever reason, you're sat there listening to a tattooed carpenter. What I love about tonight more than anything is the laughter. It's fantastic. It really is.
John, you created lawful excuse by sending in your affidavit.
Yeah, well, what's turned out, we found out recently anyway, through a little bit of, I don't know how this happened, but we found out that between 50 and 200 of these are hitting Buckingham Palace daily. We didn't... And that's every post delivery. So I don't quite know what's going on. I don't know what I started when I started this, but I do know that it went round the city because a week after doing this, I was working for a gentleman. I used to work for a stairlift company, and I was doing a job in a gentleman's house. And he was talking about this, but he didn't know it was me. I did tell him, but he told me about it before I told him. So it turned round, I started saying cough, but I didn't realise it was quite... So, this is lawful rebellion, okay? It's lawful. That's the big part. It's lawful. You're not doing anything that's against the law. And remember, the law and the legal world are two different things, are two different entities. One's real, one's an illusion. I peacefully resist all claims against this piece of paper, the person, by refusing to consent to the corporation's policy. My friend Richard did it the other day and was dragged down the station. My friend over there, Carolyn, was spent 13.5 hours in the station for doing it. You're not going to stop these people taking you away. And if you can't handle it, it's like the old saying, if you can't handle it, you know, what is the saying about the heat? Forget it, whatever. You know, you can't stand the heat, don't go in the kitchen.
It was 13 3/4 hours, and at the end of it, I did not consent to that.
Absolutely, never consented, never. And
Ended up in court. This time, I had to be released.
so one of the things I want to say about this is as well, which is very unique, is that all the time that Carolyn spent in the police station, out of all the officers she spoke to, it was a civilian who actually backed her up and said what she's saying is true. A civilian knew. But see, the officers don't understand it. They don't know. Unless you get to Chief Inspector level, then they understand, because that is fun. They really do understand the rules of the game. And I prove it because Chief Inspector Hewitt of Hertfordshire Constabulary rang me at 11:45 one night to discuss an incident that he wouldn't do because of statutory legislation. And I said that he had a common law duty to do it. And guess what? He did it. He overruled statutory legislation and he used common law. The reason being is because he knew, I knew, the rules of the game.
Can you get the chief, if you're in the police station?
Oh, absolutely.
Can you get the chief?
Do you know what the powerfulest thing to say to the police? Can I now place on record your refusal? That word strikes bells in these people. Because if you refuse a contract, it's called dishonour. And they know that. It must be the only way, because I don't know how it works. All I know is that I threatened the Chief Inspector with common law. And the incident was over a noisy neighbour, would you believe? It wasn't nothing to do with me, it was my stepson. I even proved that the sergeant that night committed perjury. He lied through his teeth. Absolutely lied through his teeth. Remember as well, you're walking into an environment, you have absolutely no protection. You have no protection from these people, they can do what they want. I've got stories, I've got no reason to disbelieve it, and a gentleman's coming to see me tomorrow. He was threatened with being hung up by his left leg until he consented.
Yeah, I was threatened with violence.
Richard was threatened. Carolyn's threatened. Do you know why? Because they're frightened of you. They are seriously frightened of you. They're frightened of the words you use.
But the police officers are starting to know.
They are, darling, I know they are. Absolutely. I'm not against the police. I've got friends in the police and I know that they're good people. I know they've got hearts, good hearts on them, and I'm not against them, and we do need a police force because there is elements out there who don't understand the difference between right and wrong, and even if they do, they're not doing as they should do. And it's sad.
Is it because of common purpose then?
It's another question I don't want to answer. Yeah. Talk to Brian. What I would always ask is, am I obliged to answer your questions? Okay? Am I obliged? All right? I would ask them, under what authority and under what law are you acting? As I now know, you will be arrested for obstructing an officer in his duty. What I would ask is, duty to who? It's true, isn't it?
Can I ask, if they're a service, are they not our service?
Absolutely, absolutely correct. That's what the police men and women are. The fictional officer, the persona, is not. The trouble is these people are being trained into being this fiction. They're not being trained as they used to be trained.
When has that change come about?
Do you know what? I'd love to know. So if you can find out, please tell me. That's another thing as well I want to say to you tonight. This is what the People's United community is about. It's about you. If you find anything out that you think we need to know, or you feel we need to know, let us know. And it doesn't...
Way, they're anticipating a summer of rage.
But that's a great way of installing fear. And this all works on fear.
Fired, man.
Can I just say something as well?
Yeah.
You said something about needing a police force because there are some elements of society who don't know right and wrong. I just watched a guy called Russell Blaylock, who's an MD in America, who talks a lot about diet and allergies and immunisations and all this sort of stuff, which actually, if you take additives and things out of people's diet, the violence that they were expressing...
Absolutely. Absolutely. Man-made chemicals. It's absolutely true.
But the thing is though, is that your right and wrong might be someone else's completely. I don't understand why your right and wrong is the next man's right and wrong. You know, that's what I don't get. Is how you can say there's right and wrong when like my right and wrong can be completely different to his there or his there.
It's common sense, isn't it? Yeah, but it's common sense.
Yeah, but what if I would have
Yeah,
done
well,
to
look,
me,
we'll
it's like
do
not
questions
my
and
fault.
answers.
You know what I mean? Like then, you know, it doesn't make any
Can we do questions and answers after, please? I've got to try and get to the end of this, and then I'll answer any question. I don't mind. Yeah, I'll answer your questions. I'll answer any question you know. I will remind him, and this is absolutely true. Okay, failure to differentiate between a statute and law is gross negligence, which is equivalent to fraud. Okay. A friend of mine, Albert Burgess, an ex-police special, is applying this. He's doing certain things at the moment that are going to be very interesting. The outcome. Put it this, Scotland Yard have got quite a twist about him at the moment, which I love because I will remind them this applies to anyone who's trying to enforce a statute upon me, no matter who they are. Because it's not being forced on me, it's being forced on that piece of paper. I remind them that the person you are trying to act upon is nothing more than a piece of paper, and I would explain why. If I receive a fixed penalty notice about my car which states it applies to the owner, I'm going to bloody send it to the owner. This applies to any fixed penalty notice I receive regarding something I've been duped into registering. If I receive an on-the-spot fine, I will send it to the GRO with a copy of my birth certificate saying you created the person, you own the place, and you paid the bloody fine. But it's nothing to do with me, it's to do with that piece of paper. I told you before. If I get a summons to go to court, I'm going to send a copy of birth certificate and tell them, crack on! I'm sorry, but it's that simple. That's how simple it is. We've been bashing our heads against the wall trying to say to ourselves, how are we going to fight this? How are we going to fight it? It's so bloody simple. Rob, wait. One piece of paper in our world creates 10 in theirs. Okay? That's what it creates. It creates 10. You don't have to do the maths for you. Work it out for yourself. One doctor, one case, 15,000 pieces of paper. Okay? Do the maths. They want to do paperwork? Give them paperwork to do.